day and good evening, and welcome back to Relic Farm and Talk with me, Caetsu Chaiji, but you can just call me Kai. So, essentially, just chill discussion. If you have a topic you'd like to talk about, we can do that. In the meantime, I have book steps to do. I am in this location because I just had to catch the last fate I needed for this book. And it spawned while I was preparing for the stream, so, you know. I'm also on Ravana, so connection weird, but if you want to hang out in-game while I'm doing the Relic stuff, you're welcome to. Although I will be, you know, rushing around, so it'll be difficult to keep up with me, I'm sure. But on that note, hey Talima, hey Zaf, hey Agent Monica, hey Tinley, hey Ilana, hey Saros, hey Pupamit, hey Alice, hey Couch, hey Lucas, hey Kubamana, hey Butterfly, hey Gazla, hey Ilya, hey Mistel, hey Fila, hey Kay, and hope you're all doing very well. Is it possible to do books for multiple Zodiac weapons simultaneously? No. You can only have one book at a time. So if you have a book for, say, a warrior relic, you go to the NPC that gives out the books and try to get one for, I don't know, a monk. Then she'll be like, oh, do you want to get rid of the book you already have? Are you sure about that? So no, you cannot. Thank you, Rust. Hey, Violet. Hope you're doing well. I actually considered, so what I'm thinking is that I will probably just, once I finish the book step on Warrior, I will probably do book steps on a different job. I considered just progressing Warrior along to what else is happening. But then I remembered that I didn't bring my materia for that to materia. Pretty ironic, isn't it? So we're not doing that. We're not gonna progress. We're just gonna do more book steps. Also, you know, pretty chill. Easier to do that, I think. Just stick to one thing. Also, thank you for the gifted sub, Rust. Hey, Ragnarok, yeah. Hope you're doing well. Since I tried out Fellowship today, after the stream yesterday, healing as the Time Weaver was fun, but also had a hard time spam healing tanks if they pulled too much, but still enjoyed what was done so far. Yeah, I think I talked about that on the stream yesterday, that it doesn't really matter. Like, the only healer where it kinda works, quote-unquote, to just spam heal, I think, is Vigor, for both Sylvie and Aeona. If you're spamming your basic heal, the Flash Revision or Restore Life, you're not doing anything else. Flash Revision fortunately produces resources, so eventually you can amend fate to, like, help in that regard, but you're not, like, actually progressing in the most efficient way. So if, like, you're falling behind, it's just that it's better in the immediate present. And sometimes that's just what you need to do, because, like, if you try and play the value game and not spam heal, then the tank dies, and then you don't have a tank, and then you wipe. So it's, you know, a balancing act of figuring out when you do that. I play Sylvie a lot myself. I also played Aeona a lot a bunch this season, and in both cases there are definitely situations where you see the tank drop below 50%, below 30%, and you're just there, like, you know, like in a shaking machine, thinking, trust the process, it'll be fine. And you just keep going with whatever it is you need to do. Like, a notable thing for Aeona is that whenever she's not using Oblivion, she's not getting the cooldown reduction that it provides, so you don't get to do the other good things you can do. Also, Elia, hope you're doing well. Working on the AR Relic now for the first time. Just curious, how do you get or find grade 1, 2, or 3 materia? You can buy them for certain currencies, I believe, from beast tribes, aka allied societies. Or you get them by spirit bond, by extracting materia after spirit bonding with gear of an appropriate item level. most people buy them off the market board, which is why the knowledge on it is not very, very updated, perhaps, because the only players that really need the information on how to acquire them, aside from them just, you know, magically appearing in the market board when people have them, are free trial players. Not that there's anything wrong with that, it's just the players that go on to like make guides on this kind of stuff are less likely to be free trial players, so they're less likely to consider that, right? Say Lex. And Roxy says, yeah, the healing was best when able to fully attack. Exactly. Butterfly says, so it doesn't work to just not heal and follow the tanks adjust logic? No. In fact, especially at lower leagues, if you don't heal the Helena tank, they will just die. Like, they have gotten a heal recently in the new season. But that's like, there's 30 seconds between them. So Helena most of the time relies on the healer to heal them. Mako and Xavier only heal so much, so ultimately you have to help. I'll say crash out. Just finished my White Mage AR Relic book. Nice. Next is that teleport on button L2? Yes, I put some buttons here to make it faster for me to move while we're doing relics. I don't normally have these two buttons there. The problem is that normally I have to press twice to get my teleport. So yes, it is. And then I do this anyway. I'm just so smart, guys. I'm a genius over here. You just can't fathom. But it is worth mentioning with Fellowship that as you progress further... PhD, by the way. No, I have a master's degree. Just below a PhD. Hey, Sally. Hope you're doing well. But as you progress in Fellowship, as a tank, you will eventually hit a point where you will be tanky enough that outside of pulling like stupidly large amounts of enemies, which you sometimes will for efficiency's sake, you are the least important person to heal because you've got this as a tank. Which means that what you can pull or not pull more so comes down to, a lot of the time, what can your healer survive? Master is lower than a doctor. Yes, it goes bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, and then, at least in Denmark, a doctor's degree. So, in a way, I believe doctor's degree can go even further. But that's not like used for as much. Something like that. I don't actually know that much about it because I don't care. I'll say Frosty Trout. If it's a... Where does your accent come from? I'm from Denmark. And thank you. A doctorate, yes. I believe that is above a PhD. There's also the part, just to be clear, that having a PhD does not make you a professor. But yeah, I might be mixing things up, and that a PhD is actually, in other words, doctor. And it probably is. But professor is a job. The PhD is, you know, a degree. You're not a professor unless you have the job professor. Something like that. Frosty Trout says, mine is a Master's of Defense and Strategic Studies. My degree is in Applied Mathematics. And so I have applied my math in a lot of things, such as video games. Thank you, Sally. I was like, says a degree means you have debt. Being a professor means you can pay it off. Bad news, I was like, in Denmark, you don't accrue debt getting a degree. Actually, you get paid to take it. Not a lot, but you get paid. So most people finish their studies in the green. I don't know why I'm all the way over here. You could accrue a debt while getting a degree. You could, but yeah, compared to, for instance, the US, where you're paying for the whole thing, for the whole party, you don't do that in Denmark. You have to have too expensive habits. I was like, I don't know if I missed you earlier, but I hope you're doing well as well, procrastinauts. That makes the university less money. You know, wild concept would be when you change zones that it didn't close the book. That would be cool. Wouldn't that be nice? X says, I genuinely find math interesting. The language of the universe is beautiful, but dang, I hate studying it. Which is why I shifted from comp science to culinary. Fair enough. I very much enjoy math, but there are definitely some of the hard, like, more complex topics where I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'll just hang with the simpler stuff. And then simply understand how it works if it's needed, the more complex stuff. It is pretty funny. After finishing my studies, the most math I've ever done in the context of work is making videos about a video game. Weird, right? Elana, you asking which video game? Well, you might have heard of this new and upcoming game called Final Fantasy XIV. They have a lot of ideas. There's some things that they need to, like, iron out a bit here and there, like some weird things. I'm sure they'll get them fixed eventually. They have this very lucrative open beta test where you can just install the game, and you can play most of the, like, a huge amount of the game without even, like, with no limitations. You just go for it. I think they call it a free trial though. But yeah, that is what I end up using my math degree for. Nailed it. I'm sure my teachers expected that the thing that I would find math the most useful for was calculating the most effective way to cast Fire 4. Case's Fellowship streamer plays 14. Yeah, I know, crazy. It's really weird. They decided to make the Xavian character equivalent into like this mix. Like some of the things are on this paladin thing that uses a sword and shield, which is really weird because you'd think that would be the Helena character, right? And then there's this Dark Knight thing that uses the greatsword. It's really, really just weird. A calculated machinist AoE rotation? Yes, I have. If you've seen my guide on Machinist, the reason why there are so many like level ranges where I'm like, at this level, you switch to AoE on this many targets, and on this level it's this many, and this level it's this many. It's because I calculated it myself. At the time where I was making my guide, I don't believe that there was like that people had like gotten around to that yet. Hey, you know me. Hope you're doing well. Canon Black Mage behavior, IMO. Yeah, probably. Probably. At how many targets is Auto Crossbow optimal on again? That's a fantastic question. That has changed like 4 times since I made my guide. I have no idea. However, I do know that the answer depends on how nicely stacked the pack is, because Blazing Shot and checks are only better if like the checks can actually hit everything at a certain target count. And Auto Crossbow is a little more lenient on that. There's also the part that, like, if you start your AoE while you already have the checks, then Auto Crossbow might be better if you don't, like, have time to both spend all of your checks. And on top of that, like, build more and spend those. Like, if it's a really, really brief AoE opportunity, then Auto Crossbow becomes better at an earlier target, like a lower target count. But yeah, it changes a lot. I think the magic numbers that you're looking for are probably somewhere around like 5 to 8 targets is where things start to get really, really wacky. Is there a use of the heat gauge in trash pulls at AR level range? Kind of depends. I believe the thing you need to look for there is how much potency is Heat Blast and half a Gauss round worth. How much single target potency per second is that? And then based on that, compare that to how much you can do, how much potency per second you can do on AoE, like by just spamming Spread Shot. I would guess just off the top of my head that a heat gauge is only really worth spending on like up to 3 targets. How do you calculate how many targets Air Anchor or Flamethrowers was using on? Flamethrower, you just check the number that Flamethrower says it does, and then you multiply that by the target count. There might be a little bit more to it because of the exact timing of its damage, but basically assume that the damage it says it does is once per second. So, again, your alternative, you convert that to potency per second by dividing the listed potency by the GCD on the attack. And Flamethrower you just take straight because it hits once per second. And Flamethrower is basically now superior to Auto Crossbow on any number of targets, if I recall correctly. Either equal or superior. Which means that what you do with Flamethrower is the moment you have gone through cooldowns, like other more important cooldowns, you click Flamethrower, and once that is on cooldown, you work your way down to Heat Gauge and things like that. Hey, Bolin! Hope you're doing well. For air anchor, it's a lot more complicated because air anchor is... Now, you might be shocked. Air anchor is a single target attack, which means that it doesn't scale with target count. But what air anchor does is theoretically a huge amount of damage. I'll get to that, Ham. But thank you for the reminder about that. Air anchor's damage as is good enough to like compete with like about 4 target AoE, I believe. Then you figure out how much potency is 20 battery gauge worth. For that, you need to figure out how much is, how much is 50 battery gauge worth, because that's the lowest you can use, and then you take, 40% of that. That's added to air anchor's value, assuming that you don't overcap on battery gauge as a result, which, you shouldn't. You should be using your queen so you don't waste resources if you're able. But as Ham mentioned, what you do is, while mobs are being rounded up, that is when you click air anchor. When the mobs are like a little bit all over the place anyway, that's when you hit it. Congratulations, Bolin. Very nice. Did you get any loot? Did you get loot? But yeah, that is essentially what it comes down to with air anchor, which is what makes it a little awkward to play around. And it isn't the only time in Machinist's toolkit that you have a weird experience with the battery gauge generator of air anchor and hotshot. Before you get air anchor, there is actually a range of levels where hotshot is so bad that the only way you can justify using it for maximum, like actually for it to be optimal to actually use it on cooldown is, well, maybe you don't have full uptime anyways, so you need that battery gauge for some reason, or it allows you to get a robot with more battery inside raid buffs you wouldn't have had otherwise, and things like that. Because hotshot itself is so weak relative to everything else at like around level 66 to 70, I believe it is, that it is like, it's so close that there is at least an argument to be made that there's no need to worry about it. It drifts, whatever. I'm a shield healer and a fresh static we built so DPS got prio. Oh, well, yeah. Some statics do that. But it probably makes sense, especially if you had more trouble with DPS checks than the healing and the tanking, which is usually the case. That the DPS, like the damage, is more helpful. You know, Zully, I don't mind that too much. At least by that, you can assume that there will be a bunch of them. It's a lot worse when you're, like, in a zone where, for some reason, they decide to put, like, 2 spawns of the enemy you need, and then the book says, kill 3 of them. Great. Thanks. Zay West, hope you're doing well. This is, the Wings mount drop from Valiamander, the first extreme of Dawntrail. You know, speaking of which, where does the third Ugabaru Roundman spawn? Oh, there he is. Oh boy, dungeon time. Khan. Is it hard to do the relics in free trial? It is a lot harder. In a way. Because there are some steps where level 70 isn't quite trivial. But where it gets really tough is if you try to do them at level 50. There's also the part that there are a lot of things that normally you will just buy off the market board, but on the free trial you can't do that. Oh yeah, that's true, Zav. You get to level 80 now. That is true. Point still stands. Lex says, I wonder how bad Dark Knight's highest burst DPS title gets affected now that they're removing 2-minute burst windows. I mean, the whole thing with Dark Knight, which is what often made the conversation kind of confusing, is that Dark Knight simply has the capacity to shove the most damage into a raid buff window. Which means that when that window exists and is being utilized, Dark Knight can do the most. But that also means that if they changed nothing about Dark Knight but removed the 2-minute burst, then Dark Knight would still get completely crushed in that specific regard. It wouldn't become bad, it's just that it would lose that advantage because the advantage originates from everyone else, not the Dark Knight. Hey Jeff Matt, hope you're doing well. What job do I have to clear you mad with to unlock your haircut? I don't know. I would have assumed a haircut like this would be a default option. But thank you. Wolfkin says, I'm very curious about your thoughts on the current poll. The Reaper Viper one? Hey Bronzo, hope you're doing well. Bronzo says, I don't think burst windows are gone to BH. If we have any job at all that keeps its support motif like Astro Dancer, Barter, then every job will play like Samurai. Yeah, that is actually, Brontom, the reason why. The fact that the devs basically recognized the problem and clarified that they know what the problem is tells me that, well, let me just put it like this. If a job keeps a buff they can share with someone else in the way that you just described, then we have to conclude that the developers are not aware of how their game is played, because they have recognized, specified that the problem comes from the burst window itself. They know what the problem is. So if they don't clear all of it, then they should also know that the problem doesn't go away. Because the problem requires only one raid buff to persist. Just one. But I'm assuming that the developers of the game that I like know that. Which is the reason why I'm going in with the assumption that when they say that the 2-minute burst and the synergistic buffs like that are going away, they mean all of them. Bronson says, I'm in the it's not even a problem camp. No, see, the problem there, Brontom, is it's not about whether you think it's a problem. When they introduced the situation themselves, they specified that it is a problem. So it doesn't matter what you think. The developers have recognized that there is a problem here. So either they know how to fix it, I know how to get rid of it. I saw there's what they said, and I immediately thought, well, of course, no raid buff will survive. Because if a single one survives, that's all it takes. Weaver says, unless you are secretly a dev, that would be a big shock, wouldn't it? I mean, personally, I'm sure you know, Brontum, that for me, it's like, whatever, I'll just do whatever they do. But I did say, like, in early Endwalker or so, like early mid Endwalker, I highlighted that the 2-minute burst is a problem. So I knew that something like this was gonna come home to roost. Hey, see you, Silva. Yes, as Asymmetricon says, they could make sure that the jobs that are supportive can stay supportive. The problem is with making it a temporary window. It has to be a constant. Because if it's temporary, then it means that jobs have to play into it. If they make it so that I'm an Astrologian, by playing my rotation good, I make the party do more damage all the time. Then it doesn't matter that, like, then the other jobs can play however they want. We don't have enough info, so everything is speculation. Yes and no, you listed Bard. We know that Bard doesn't have a damage increasing buff. All of its previous damage increasing buffs have been replaced with defensives. And while not a job that is as connected with the whole raid buffing thing, Dragoon lost its raid buff too and instead has a funny defensive cooldown, sort of, in its big smacker move. But we can, I guess we could also say, based on what we've seen so far, they could make it work. They could bamboozle all of us and go, no, actually the burst window is every 40 seconds now. And to some degree, all of the jobs they've shown us would be able to play into that in some form or another. So who knows? Maybe we're all gonna get memed. Hey, dogs! And hey, Israzra! Israzra? Hope you're doing well. Hope someone gets some cool stuff with the Vault mode. I like the stance caster gimmick. I guess we will see. Which step am I at right now? Book step. Procrastinator says, are we 100% sure that every button they have in Evolved was on the bars in that demo? Could it just be that they didn't have stuff keybound? Well, let me counter that, Procrastinauts, by saying that literally every button that the only thing that was missing, if that was the case, was Battle Voice for Bard. So if they did that, they had deliberately gone heavily out of their way to hide something like that. Again, want to remind you, like, couple minutes, like, away from them showing Bard, they said this, that the 2-minute burst is a problem that they're getting rid of. So, like, there's no need to be like put down that magnifying glass. Place, like, give me that detective hat. Nope. You don't just put it down. Nope. There is no big hidden spooky secret, in my opinion. It would shock me incredibly if a single job has a temporary damage buff that is shared with the raid. Because if there is, then they've kind of acknowledged the problem and not fixed it. Ontum says, I think we only saw the level 50 version of jobs. It's my crackpot theory. The Paladin had Imperator, and they showed in their images that Paladin would have Requiescat at level 50. West, I am Danish. And the funny thing is, if they changed the temporary rate buffs to single target, it would still not solve the problem. Imperator call is a bit too German-like. Oh yeah, I learned to call it Imperator by a German friend. Hey, Ham. Zav, are you asking what the problem is that the devs are trying to fix? The problem is that the 2-minute burst is so difficult to play around because any job that doesn't play directly into it will be unable to be balanced well to actually function without either being overpowered or underpowered. Unless it plays directly into it, making all of the jobs kind of samey. And it also leads developers to make boss fights kind of samey because they're trying to play around the fact that players are going to be working in this way. They know the 2-minute burst is happening, so they make fights under that assumption. Every job is playing roughly in the same cadence as a result, which is not very interesting a lot of the time. It leads to jobs essentially feeling like they need to play in a specific way, which makes job identity very weak for a lot of jobs. Would be like, it doesn't take that much. Let me just say, I have a whole video where I talk about this more in depth, but just to give some random examples, in the past, Bart's songs were on an 80-second loop, not 2 minutes, 80 seconds. And you know, Monk had 90-second cooldowns on Brotherhood. Summoner's rate buff was a 3-minute cooldown. Like, the jobs were... Just looking at the cadence of when jobs did the thing that they do was different. Like, that's not everything that makes or breaks a job in regards to being interesting or not. But it's just an example of, like, the further back we look, the more things were distinct from each other. But because the jobs kind of need to play into this 2-minute burst to be viable, it feels like, all of the jobs end up playing kind of samey as a result. And again, when I say they play kind of samey, it is a little bit of an abstract overview, because obviously the 2-minute burst is different for each job, right? Like, it's not like every job plays the 2-minute burst the same way, and just because it's a 20-second window where you press all your big buttons, that it's the same. But there are some jobs where it's a lot more clear, like the whole joke with Gunbreaker and Paladin having, like, roughly the same burst every minute, with only, like, vague differences when you really think about it. And when I say that it is a problem, the key to remember is that it's not me. Like, I said in Endwalker that it was a problem that eventually would need fixing. And that it was going to go one of two ways. Either we're just going to get more and more and more samey. I predicted that Bards would lose their dots. I mean, they showed Evercold where Bards' dots last 3 seconds each. If that's staying, then I feel like it's close enough for me to say that that's a win, and a win for me. But I expected that to happen with the 2-minute burst staying. And the reason why I'm calling it a problem now is not because I think it's a problem, it's because it was specified as a problem in FanFest reveal itself. Wes says, do you have a video for the 300k guild cap, how to spend them wisely? No, I don't, but you can ask. And there are many ways to do it. The key thing is to find something that you will probably need many of in the long term. For instance, glamour prisms is something you could buy. But given as I never played on the free trial for more than a day, I never had to contend with the 300 gil cap. Back when I got into the game, the free trial was capped at level 35. Where do you buy glam prisms on free trial though? I thought you could buy them for gil at various vendors. SSK says, I've got almost 600 hours and I still don't really know what a glamour prism does. What a glamour prism does is, whenever you can do this, it costs you 1 glamour prism. The reason why you might not be spending a lot is that when you put items in your glamour chest, that costs a glamour prism. But using a glamour plate does not cost a glamour prism. So that might be the reason why you're like, I don't know what I'm using them for, but I have no trouble using glamour. Doink. Oh. He took a hit. But yeah, some like things you can do is buy dye if that's an option, buy glamour prisms, dark matter, preferably the most recent one if that's possible. Any item that might hold value in the long term. Either for yourself to use or for when you eventually get like the full version of the game to sell. Why should I buy dye? Because you can use dye to dye your gear. So you could look like this. Why not? It's glam. It's the true end game. That is a weird question, West. Just making sure that I'm keeping track of some things that I might need here. Oh, I need this one for later. Kind of need this one for later as well. I could probably grab this now. Let's see. Doing the subprime is there. And there. And I do recall that I need a bunch of things over there. Hey, Node. Hope you're doing well. Sounds like you're not. That sucks. Or something. See, the thing is, West, you could buy dye at like NPC selling price, right? And that's fine. And then when you get a subscription later down the line, if you don't need the dye, you could sell the dye to the market board, like to other players, possibly like at a reduced rate, like less than PC price, if you can't sell it at, you know, technically, then PC sells the die, right? If then NPC sells the die. But that way, you could stockpile. Like, if it costs you 200 gil to buy an item that you can resell for 100 gil, it still means that for the cost of 200 gil, you can exceed the gil cap. Or rather, for the cost of 100 gil, you can exceed the gil cap by 100 gil. Because now you hold 300k gil. Oh, thank you. And an item that is worth 100 gil that you can then exchange for money when you need it later. Which is the main thing you would need to do. Oh, friends! The main thing you would need to do to bypass this 300k gil cap. Over there. But yeah, the reason why I don't have a video on this is, as I said, I was never on the free trial. So I don't know much about it, and you may be shocked, but I typically make videos on topics that I'm somewhat familiar with. Free trial can't trade, so can they? So you're just saving money for once. Exactly. Precisely. But that is also what I kept repeating. That's what I've been saying this whole time. Is that the trick is so that you have money later. Making like a piggy bank. Is Big Bad Idea supposed to be here? Oh, that one is in Madonna. Is Cerulean Road this? I don't think so. Says it's supposed to be here. Fun fact, this is why TBN is a damage gain on Dark Knight. Wait, what? Ziski says, that doesn't sound like typical streamer YouTuber behavior. Yeah, but that's because I'm different. Trust in me. There it is. Big Bad Idea. Yoink. And then we need to check one last place. But before we do that, let's not get too confused here. Oh, we're going there anyway. Got a gut feeling about this. What I'm doing here, for those that don't know too much about relic weapons, I have a list of all of the book leave quests that are needed. And I basically like grab the books in a certain order, and I grab and so I'm just filling in the next 5 books in advance. so that I can just, like, I specifically wanted to make sure I had done this before the stream, but I learned that apparently it seems like either I've been exceptionally unlucky or live quests straight up do not refresh if you don't do live quests. Oh, that's true, Bronto. That's true. In a way, that is technically how Dark Knight TBN Opti works. That is correct. Jeff says, I always just did a live quest to refresh the list. Oh, yeah, but that's also what I'm doing. The reason why I'm flying around to check every live mid now is because I did one. So they refreshed, and I'm looking for the live quests that I need. Can't you pick up and abandon the lives to get new ones? You could, yeah. For some reason, I have this weird mania with not wasting my lave allowance, but good point. The reason why I didn't want to do that is because I had a project in a little achievement hunting project with these. And then one day, while I was running back and forth in Limsa handing in fish 3 at a time, I had this revelation that it wasn't fun. And that, what am I gonna do with that achievement? What am I gonna do with that achievement? Once I have it, okay, great. Who cares? Right? And so I just stopped and did something else. I actually took all of those fish that I had bought specifically to do that and just trashed them. Just, this is stupid. Screenshot the achievement and make it into your channel banner. Wow. Bex, with all that work to make the very, very awesome channel banner we have. No. What we really need is a picture of an achievement. Now, that's a banner with that really, really slaps. There you go, nailed it. Oh? Huh? But yeah, there are many achievements in 14 that are like have such an insanely high requirement that if you take a moment to think about it, it kind of looks like the achievement is more like a statistic on your account, but instead of making like a specific dedicated like statistics page, they just went such achievement. If they go past 5,000, they probably don't care anymore anyway. And then players went, but I could feel this. And so they did. I am assuming the 4 winds is over here. That's why I'm checking over here. You have 5,000 S ranks, that's true. I actually have a video from back in late Endwalker where I calculated some of the most, like, time-demanding achievements in the game. And in that, one of the achievements that I brought up, just like as a little bit of like a is it here? As like a taster demonstration of what we're talking about. I demonstrated that if you constantly grind it, just spammed Ifrit normal, which can be completed in 1 second, because of the loading screens and whatnot, FFXIV would take like over a day, if I recall correctly. Just spamming. And then of course the follow-up is, but obviously don't do that. That's stupid. And the biggest ones, the most time-consuming ones, were related to doing all of the PvP victories stuff, like frontline victories, and doing all of the live quests, and getting all of the hunt marks, specifically S ranks, because of how long that would take. And I believe, yeah, I believe near the end of the video, I actually like spelled out, if you wanted to like take your time and clear all of these time-consuming achievements, what you'd have to do every day is, well, 6 live quests, and then just like this many frontline games, like average, this many S ranks, and blah blah blah. And if you do all of that, you will have finished all of it at the same time in like 7.5 years when you've done all of the live quests. Sio Silva says FFXIV takes 100 days because of the instance limit. Incorrect! Mythbuster time! Dun 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 dun. The 100 duty limit is only induced by dungeons, and if you do other duties than dungeons, it doesn't count. However, if you hit the 100 dungeon limit, it blocks you from using the duty finder altogether. And the most common place people crash into this problem is if they're farming money by spamming the vault as Blue Mage, or they're doing an ARR relic and trying to do it in one day, but instead of doing it with trials, they're doing it with Aurum Veil for some reason. Lex says, wait, there's a duty limit. Why? Because bots use it to farm liquid money. And the bots usually use dungeons to do it. Or so I've heard. That is the reason why it is so oddly specific. Because it's trying to target something really, really specific. But yeah, a lot of people... Oh, I think that is the one I need. A lot of people, I believe, learned of this duty limit in the context of a YouTuber getting blocked by such a challenge. Because they did it with dungeons. Missiles is coming across an actual bot is very rare. You'll see the accusation thrown out occasionally, but usually it's just someone being a bad player. Oh, Mistel, there's something really important. The reason why you don't come across a lot of bots is because they hide in the floor and in the walls. If you hang out near places where there are specific MSQ things that you have to pass, you will, in waves, suddenly just have like your whole chat filled with bots gaining levels. Because they teleport. You meant in dungeons specifically, right. So what I mean is they go in unsynced. They're not spamming the dungeons to do them with players. It gives you... Yeah, well... Actually, I guess that doesn't give you kills, so they do them synced, but they would do them in a group of 4 bots. Sorry, I'm getting myself confused here. Irid says the bot method is to get to level 50, do bot job quests, and farm Wanderer's Palace. There you go. How does he know? seen the bots. Back in the day, sometimes we would do walk and talks as just tea time, and we would hang out incidentally just in a place in Gridania that happened to be like a nice little bench in a hidden off area. But there was an NPC there that was MSQ relevant. So sometimes we'd just sit there and then suddenly we'd hear the explosion of 10 plus characters leveling up. And then we would notice that indeed there were 10 names that sounded like on the keyboard that was within the area. Runsum says, I thought the farm was the vault. The player farm is the vault. Because you can clear the all of the packs before the first boss in the vault as Blue Mage in extremely short order. And it gives reasonably large amounts of money. It happens in the Gridania Grand Company. You see it various places. There is a specific quest with like a mud poppy that has to be like an especially large mud poppy that you have to fight in Kurthas, where sometimes you'll pass by and it's fighting something in the ground. Hey, Ancient Slayer. Hope you're doing well. Bro, stop looking at them, wary merchant. You don't seem that wary, are you, though? Do we have anything here before I move on? No. Back to Kurthas. Are there major bot issues in game? I think I've only ever noticed a bot once in a Stone Vigil run. Bots interacting with other players are rare enough that I would say no, there isn't a problem there. But it does sometimes happen. A really cursed piece of knowledge, and you know, I guess kind of obligated to say this, mod and plugins at your own risk. The official stance is not allowed, right? Remember, I didn't tell you to do it. But there is a botting tool, apparently, that some players like to use, which is specifically designed to level your jobs by spamming dungeons. But it is specifically made with the intention of you doing that in duty support. So it's specifically designed to be able to do it safely, efficiently with NPCs, such that it doesn't mess with other players, because at least the creator of such a thing had the decency to do that. I believe there's even something in it that it doesn't work if you try to start it outside of it being able to open duty support and go for it. Which I guess that's considerate, but a little weird. And yes, as Metricon says, the problem is more so about the game economy. Basically, the reason why... That's really funny. That's the wrong zone. Well, we take those. The reason why basically any item that a level 50 job could farm easily has effectively no value in the game is because a bot could do it. So a bot has done it. The same can also sometimes be said about gathering things, because, I mean, you could just use a bot on your actual account. Again, don't recommend that. How's it, Yannick? Hope you're doing well. But for the most part, it isn't such a big problem that it is something that is like breaking the game for people. The bigger economic damage that the game is doing to itself is the existence of the Free Company Workshop. That is an abomination, and it is incredible that it has stayed in the game for so long. So some people use them for Accursed Horde achievements, which are just mind-numbingly boring to do. I mean, same thing. It's the same as the Live Quest thing. Like, it's a thing where it's no difficulty. There is nothing impressive about it. You just have to do thing 5,000 times. And it's easy to just have a bot do it, which of course means that while there is an argument to be made, thank you, Ilya. Ilya told me that the Fate just spawned. While there's an argument to be made that, well, the achievement wasn't impressive to begin with, right? It's certainly not made any, like, it's not making it any more, or like it's not being made better by the fact that most people are likely to get the achievement by botting. Which means that if you legitimately got the achievement, you are likely to be accused of probably having botted it, because who would sit through that? Which kind of sucks, right? Hey, LTC! What happens then if a player is trying to grind from 1 to 100 using dungeons? We hit the 100 dungeon limit and get told to touch grass? Yes. Essentially. But only, Lex, if you do it in 1 day. Because the 100 limit has a daily reset. So, like, just to be clear, even, like, if you were spamming dungeons to, like, legitimately doing dungeons to spam, right? To level. Unless you're in, like, an absolutely pumper group doing it with you, I would imagine that the average clear time of each dungeon would be over 10 minutes. In which case it would take you 1,000 minutes? How many minutes are there in a day? More than that. But it still would mean that you'd have to... basically, to make it take 1,000 minutes, you would need to have to spam like an absolute maniac. No bathroom breaks, no eating, no sleeping, just constant spam. Hey, Lux Populi, hope you're doing well. Lux Populi. You would have to do all of that basically in one sitting, and then like you add in all the breaks you take in between. And remember that like you would basically have to like to just try and do this, you'd probably have to wake up at the daily reset, so you have exactly 24 hours. Then you could hit it. You could hit it, but then you're basically setting yourself up for failure if what you're doing is trying to farm power level by spamming dungeons. Right? Then if you set yourself up such that you can do 100 dungeons as quickly as possible so that you lock yourself out of it, then you're not trying to power level by doing dungeons. Then you're trying to prove that you can do 100 dungeons, quote unquote, legitimately, normally in a day. by doing it in a degenerate way that is absolutely not normal. I was like, Christopher. So basically, any way that you will land in this situation is by doing everything in your power to land in this situation to begin with. The probability that you would find yourself in this position under normal circumstances is basically nil. 0. Christopher says, I believe it works out to less than a 14-minute dungeon clear average for 24 hours straight. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I was like, probably above 10 minutes per dungeon, because like there are some Realm Reborn dungeons that are relatively fast, and then like you get to high level dungeons. But if we assume your party are all like turbo gamers, then maybe we can assume that the average dungeon in the higher levels is like 15 minutes, and then the low level dungeons where you can run faster is like 8 or 7. And then it like averages out to 10 or 11 minutes, but it'll probably be more than that. And as you said, about 14 minutes per dungeon. And remember, you would again have to do this for basically 16 hours, right? Like something like that. Just non-stop. And if it was 14 minutes per dungeon, then it would be basically 24 hours straight. No breaks, no eating, no drinking, maybe in between loading screens, but I mean, that also adds to the timer. For 24 hours, and your 3 friends, hopefully your friends, that are helping you with this are equally as intense. Just to get blocked by a dungeon limit. But the way that you typically smash your face first in, like straight into this limit, is that guild farming methods that involve dungeons in this way typically don't finish the dungeon. Because every instance, the 100 dungeon limit is dungeons. Very, very important wording. Dungeons. It has to be a 4-man dungeon. Otherwise, it doesn't add to the tally. If you do 1,000 trials, the game doesn't care. Go ahead. But you can't do 100 dungeons. If you do, you're not allowed to do trials for the rest of the day either. You had your fill. Go to bed. You know, 3 friends to do it with you, right, Kai? I could probably round up 3 friends to help me. However, I'm pretty confident that they're not my friends anymore when we're done. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Does Ifrit Garuda Titan normal count? I don't believe they do, no. Is it just entering the dungeon? It is producing the instance by entering it. That's what causes the problem. So, for instance, the trick with the vault we talked about, you go blue mage and you just clear the packs before the first boss, leave, requeue, in again, clear the first packs, and then leave, requeue, clear the first packs. A blue mage that has like mastered this can probably do 1 run of that in like 2 or 3 minutes, I think, something like that. If the 20k gil, I think someone mentioned, is correct, I believe that the grind was 300k an hour or something like that. But the problem is that you will burn through your duty limit so fast that you can only do it for like 2 hours. But that's how it happens. And because you have to go, like, that's the reason why it's not really a problem is because you have to go out of your way so much for this to ever be a problem, that if you actually smash your face into this problem, it is basically guaranteed that you deliberately did something to land there. Exotic says, alternative horrible day. How many times can you clear Praetorium? 24 hours? Not 100 times. Maybe if you have a way to skip the cutscenes, then maybe there's a chance. The trick, Lex, is if you use a money-making strategy like that, is that you do it when you don't need any more of your... Like, you basically use your 100 duties as a currency, as a resource, and, like, I mean, you get 100 a day, right? So might as well spend them. Nox says, when does the 100 thing reset? I believe it resets with the daily reset. You can skip the Nero cutscene with Earthly Star? What? Oh, but you have to do it unsynced to do that. I was like, wait, how have I never heard of this? Because Earthly Star is not available at level 50. That was a real thing, Mistel. Yes. Sally says it's also meant to be an anti-botting measure, because guess who can do that perfect Blue Mage run every single time, every time? Yes, exactly, a bot could. That's absolutely real, Mistel. If you, like... It's not the only place where you'd see something like that. Like, in WoW, it wasn't completely unheard of to see individuals use tools. It's rare, right? But people that would use tools to, like, throttle their connection, because the way that that would play is that you would be completely impossible to track in PvP. So you'd run around an enemy, and then, like, what they see is your character going... It might work. It might not work. But the fact that they used that to even the playing field, because they wouldn't need this if they were good at the game. So they're relying on the chaos of that trick to make it so that you can't use whatever superior skill you have to beat them. Another Kai gif has been born. Fantastic. Amazing. I'm pretty sure that the Four Winds spawns over here somewhere. Also, hey, Redmaster. Hope you're doing well. Because I will try to utilize the magical superpower to spawn this fate. Now, I don't remember exactly where it is. Let me just look that up before I invoke my magical power. And... yeah, exactly. Thank you, Ilya. And on that, I'll be right back. Let's see if the magic trick... I'm assuming it won't work because there are too many fates here. That's probably the problem. But I'll be right back. And in the meantime, manatee restored. Did it work? Guessing it didn't. It might work after this one despawns. Ronsom says, I know a guy who was adamant to skip the Praetorium cutscene and would talk about it in free community chat and in Say chats in Gridania. Haven't seen them for a bit. The funny thing there is that the way to skip the cutscenes in Praetorium are like in a weird zone where technically you can do it by accident. I might be able to make that, but I don't want to hurry. So, thank you anyway, Ilya. Like, technically, you could skip the cutscene by your game literally crashing as the cutscene starts. You could... you could incidentally have a connection issue right as the cutscene starts. Things like that. And that's okay. I believe it was mentioned somewhere like that deliberately doing that is not okay, if I recall correctly. But it's nearly impossible to prove that you did it deliberately, right? So that's already a bad start. However, if you skip the cutscene somehow and are sitting there like screaming at the party to skip the cutscene 1 second after the cutscene started, you're basically self-reporting that you're using a plugin. And that's like that's not a gray area. And that's probably the real problem with the whole skipping of the cutscene, is that it's one of the more obvious ways that people that use plugins interact with other players in a very real and felt way that is hard to ignore. You know, in retrospect, I'm perfectly certain that it's gone now, but in retrospect, I should probably have jumped at the opportunity that you offered, but it's too late now. Sorry about that. So yeah, the general advice there is, again, as I said, the whole do it at your own risk thing with plugins. Do not talk about your plugins with strangers in game. Like, all it takes is someone choosing to report you for it. Exactly, Lex. What is interesting about that, Ragnarok, is that sometimes it leads to you getting an alternative, like, POV of a cutscene. Like how we saw somewhat recently for M12S. Where if you manage to die during the transition, you can see the whole cutscene play out from your corpse position. We also had that happen with Windurst somewhat recently, where I managed, like, first time, someone dragged me into the hole just as the cutscene was about to start. The second time, I managed to glitch it out myself by ethereal manipulating over the hole to someone's location in the exact moment where the cutscene was gonna start. I don't even know how I managed that, but I did. The key there with the port to the command, with the Praetorium thing is that it's difficult to tell whether someone is like using tricks to skip the cutscenes or that they were just unlucky. The consistency at which they skip them might like be a clear giveaway, but if they don't do anything, like if they don't make a wrong move, then you wouldn't be any wiser about it. You wouldn't possibly be able to know whether they are using tools or not. Like the trick is that it's difficult enough to tell that you have no way of knowing without them making a mistake. Oh, see, Sally, that one I can explain to you. The reason why some people that use those tools can get a little bit adamant about what, like, sometimes, like the ones that are not considering that they should probably not talk about it, will be very adamant that the rest of the team should skip as well in some form or another, is because they're perfectly aware that the skipping doesn't really do anything if they're the only one skipping. That's the reason why they might feel incentivized to try and give other people reason to skip as well, because it's a trick that only really, really works if everyone's doing it. Why do some people get stuck too long in cutscenes, though? Sometimes I'm already able to walk to the end of the hallway after a cutscene and realize the other people are still watching the cutscene. Slow PCs. And then that's the answer, like, it's straight up just a slow PC. Or tapping out, that is true, Adreras, but if the game is literally saying that they're still in the cutscene, as in, the game is observing that they are actually still in the cutscene, it's likely because the PC was slow, so it took longer to load the cutscene, so it took longer to get started on the cutscene with a fixed length, and then it takes longer to reach the end of the cutscene, and then it takes longer to exit the cutscene. Blah, 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 blah. Possibly, Lex. Do you have Final Fantasy XIV installed on an SSD? No, it's over there. Yes, SSD is only storage slots on my laptop has. Then your PC is above average, according to some, potentially. Or rather, it's not as potato as you might think. Because you have a game on an SSD. I don't think it's actually above average for that, but it's more average and less potato by simply having enough space to have a game on an SSD. Thoughts? What do you guys think? Does being able to have Final Fantasy XIV on an SSD make your PC less potato? How's any Grainer? By the way, guys, if you're enjoying the stream, it does help a lot with a like over on the YouTube side of things. You know, algorithms. Now, do you guys think that I will come out to 4 wins being missed? Bruh. Me face planting into a wall as I try to dash. PC isn't potato unless you have to load games off of floppy disks. That I remember watching a video like a few weeks ago of someone that was trying to play Factorio off floppy disks. That is harder than you might think. SSDs are becoming the norm and have been very prevalent in PC since... Yeah. The thing is, having an SSD has become pretty normal in PCs. My question is how normal is it to have an SSD with enough space for games like Final Fantasy XIV that take up a lot of space? Oh, well, it's not... I really should have taken Iliab on that offer, huh? Well, off to the next dungeon. Oh, looks popular. I saw that too. Nice. Pre-built standard are at minimum 500 gigabyte SSD. Well, there you go. It's 2026 and the floppy disk is still a save icon. Well, to be fair on that, I'm pretty sure it's not the save icon because it's a floppy disk. It's the save icon because it's the save icon at this point. Like if someone years ago had decided to make like early on enough to catch it, had decided that the save icon looked like a bucket, then it would probably still look like a bucket now. We just decided that that's the universal like icon of saving, right? Which is actually really funny because it means that because we decided to like use the icon of an object that is very of its time, we have an icon that represents something that we don't use anymore. Not really. But yeah, so that's an interesting detail that nowadays, well, I guess I should say a couple of years ago at this point, because then the prices went crazy. But a PC can have enough RAM now to actually just have the, like, basically have more RAM than the total space of relatively big games. And I have heard that there are ways to trick your PC into allowing you to use RAM as basically disk space. And if you can say, like, if you can put a game in your RAM, well, loading screens disappear, supposedly. So I've heard. Examples, you can have a RAM drive. There you go. I didn't know that was what it was called. Yeah, what I was going at was exactly, it's probably gonna be very expensive now. Hey, Seraph. Ow. Bruh. Bruh. I'm gonna destroy all of these eggs in spite. Curse you, bird, for wasting my time. Are you coming down? Finally, take that. Rage baiting the zoo? Yes. So if you put 14 into RAM, you just instantly teleport between areas when you walk into the marker? I imagine it won't happen like that, because the whole like screen fade to black and then fade in again is actually just there, like just artificially added. Supposedly, if you use tools for it, you can actually make it so that like when you teleport, you know, screen fades to black and then you fade in again. A couple seconds before you're actually allowed to move when you, I don't know, teleport to Limsa to show off your new glam, you would be able to move and see but the game decides to put like a blindfold on you to hide the fact that your character and everything else around you just go as it gets loaded. It's pretty nifty. It makes it look nicer. But there are definitely places would have been nice if they just didn't do that. For instance, when you get rest in a boss fight. Hey, Intersack boy! Oh, there it is! Hey! And yeah, the reason, Lex, is once again... they fade to black, move your character, turn your camera, wherever, and then fade you in again. It hides the fact that what's actually happening while the screen is black is that you just go... and then you're over there. It would basically, presumably, just snap over to where you're supposed to be. So it makes it look cleaner. But I'm just saying, a little annoying. It would have been nice. It would have been nice if we could just be allowed to not be blindfolded. Hey, James. Hope you're doing well. And thank you so much for the Gigantify. Thanks so much. Are you gonna be streaming later as well? We are talking about some computer tech and how 14 is weird. In demo, hope you're doing well. How do I click all those buttons? Do you see how there's like a blink on one of the buttons down here? Just one of them going beep, 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 beep. That's the button I'm pressing. In the meantime, I'm just here like hanging out. So the way you press all those buttons is you press them sometimes. And the way I press the ones on the right side is I have a mouse. You're doing some Witcher today? Oh, nice. You would like to do more 14? I'm working on the Dawntrail Relic. Oh, are you working on the? Are you on the Atma stage? Are we collecting paste? How far are we? Paste. Hmm. Have you heard of the leveling roulette power grind trick? Like 20 mouse buttons. Now I had one with like one of those 12 button thumb grids. I just used the front 6 to access these 6 buttons, and then I just have modifiers. So the trick, James, is let me just show you here. Is the Wii considered a retro console nowadays? I don't know. So the trick, James, let me see if I can make it visually show up. You see here, if I queued for leveling roulette right now, it would only allow me to land in duties that I'm geared for, right? Not geared for any Endwalker dungeons, or Shadowbringers dungeons, or Stormblood dungeons, or Heavensward dungeons. Not even geared for something like Wanderer's Palace. That's not a leveling dungeon, but the highest duty I can get is Aurum Vale. As long as you're no more than 3 players in your party, dressing like so, basically unequipping as much as you can, and then queuing, you can put your gear on again after you've queued, means that this is your duty selection. So if you get really good at doing these duties really fast, then that is the fastest way, because these are the fastest leveling duties. And I believe you get, is it 20 paste per dungeon? Hey, Shaq, hope you're doing well. And 95 streak, that's crazy. Could equip a weak weapon too to push. No. Unfortunately, Aurum Vale and below does not have an item level requirement. That's why they are all enabled. I don't think item level 16 is sufficient for Aurum Vale. But, and that is the trick. The reason why you can't be more than, why you have to be at most 3 players is simply that if you are 4, then the game goes, oh, I mean, if you want to do Tower of Zot in underwear, that's your choice. Like, if that's what you're into. But if you're 3 players, the game goes, well, I mean, you're not geared for that. And it wouldn't subject the stranger that you get queued into to something like that. Redmaster says, isn't that one of the tricks people did to make sure they would get Crystal Tower raids? That's correct, and that has since been fixed. That's the reason why Alliance Raid Roulette has, like, very strict item level requirements based on your level now. But they didn't do that for leveling roulette. Sio Silva says, if you're 4 players, the game will give you Sastasha anyway when you forget to turn on limited leveling roulette. You know, fair point. There's also an extra trick to this, in all seriousness. If you are 4 players, if one of you needs to level a low-level job, it's pretty neat trick. I used that trick. And tested it a bunch. That's why I know of things like this little caveat that you have to be 3 players, not 4. I also highly recommend, if you want to optimize it, if you are 3 players, you should probably be the tank, a DPS, and a healer, and then just let the second DPS be some rando. Because, like, those 3, like, if you're really good, you can turbo the dungeon at a breakneck pace. And it can be very disorienting to new players, so, I mean, if you're not in too much of a hurry, just, you know, just be happy that you got a quick duty. But there's a trick that you can use. Jax had done the surprise camp yet. I believe the book that requires surprise was one that was on the that had already cleared on Warrior. Here he goes again, acting like we have friends we can drag into our misadventures. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure James has some cool people he can bring though. Pretty confident in that one. Having friends is cheating. James says, I finished 2 of these relics and the books are so very repressed. Oh, yes. Quite a while back, James, I don't know if you're still here. Quite a while back, I did a speed run of a Realm Reborn relic where I had collected any item you could collect beforehand, and then I did the whole farm on stream. It took, I don't know if Nox is here, he can remember the time better than me. I believe it took 9 hours in total, 8 or 9 hours, and 6.5, I believe it was, of those hours was the book step. Like I started like in the morning or something like that, and people like checked in through the day like, oh, you're still on the book step. Like, I went and had a whole day, come back, you're still doing this. People complain about the Atma. Oh, so the thing is, the Atma of A Realm Reborn is not that long, but it has a huge swing in RNG because you don't know how long you're gonna sit there. You don't know when you start how many fates you need to do because it is random. Like, it is random, so you could need 1, you could need 20 for 1 Atma. But I already had done that. Like, I basically skipped the Atma step because I grinded that in advance. Hey, Goldo! And hey, Echo! Hope you're doing well as well. Echo says, as a free trial player, I gotta say the book step isn't exactly the most of my worries, but still. That's fair, because on free trial, the Alexandrite step that follows immediately after is probably way more inconvenient. And the step where you have to, like, collect specific items and whatnot, that can be expensive. And items that need to be crafted, ooh, that can get really, really, really spicy really quickly. But on a non-free trial account, those steps are just, like, done. Like, oh no, I need items to hand into NPCs. What am I to do? Goldo says, ran a sheer scope and dude had level 80 gear in level 90 dungeon. Why do people do that? The level 80 gear, assuming it was Poetics gear, should be sufficient. So what you should do in that case, Goldo, is you shouldn't look at the level requirement of the gear. You should look at the item level of the gear and determine whether they are severely undergeared based on that. Level 80 Poetics gear is acceptable for a level 89 dungeon. That's 10 levels of gear difference. Yes, but the highest gear, the Poetics gear, Goldo, the Poetics gear for level 80 is actually level 83 gear. And the power difference between level 83 gear and level 89 gear is actually pretty small. There's also the detail that if it's a first timer, I believe you're handed the level 89 gear, the artifact gear, after Aishia Scope. So it's at the perfect point where it would make very little sense for someone to go out of their way to get better gear in some form or another. And Zav can confirm that is exactly how it works. But level 80 Poetics gear is fine for the whole leveling experience from level 80 to 89, like to level 90. Then you hit level 90, you get Poetics gear again. That is how it works. And then sometimes you'll get a few pieces on the way. And also, as Sarah says, the game didn't stop him. And as you probably saw, just like if you saw just moments ago, there are item level restrictions on higher level leveling dungeons. If the game believed that the level 80 gear wasn't good enough, it would have stopped him. Now, I'm pretty sure the reason why you noticed, Goldo, was because what role were they filling? Because if it was a tank and they were taking way more damage than expected, it's possible that it's because they weren't using mitigation very well. Like I have mentioned before, some of you may know of the insane gigapulls in Mount Gulg. I've done those at level 79 in level 70 Poetics gear. As Dark Knight. And not needed Living Dead. So it can be a skill issue. As a samurai, well, I mean, in that case, who cares, right? Guys, the dungeon is going to be a little bit shorter because the samurai has a bad weapon. A little bit of hyperbole there. I'm just joking a little bit. What's the highest level dungeon you can do without a jobstone? Any dungeon. The game doesn't stop you from queuing into duties with a jobstone, and that is a very weird choice of the game. James says, I was helping someone else farm Atma. I ended up getting 4 before they got 1. Ah, yes, the classic. The classic. Oh, man. And the best one would be if you didn't need any of them. Like, you still had the quest so that you could get more, so that you could get other Atma. You don't need any more of this specific one, but now you have 4 more. Thanks, I guess. Ragnarok here says, I generally recommend using Predic's Gear until the next expansions. Predic's Gear, as it is good enough for most things. Tanks are the one exception, as dungeons can be quite nasty on Predic's Gear, like Bottom's Metal. Bad news there, Ragnarok. I just want you to, if we just rewind what I said a little bit ago. Level 60 Poetic's Gear is level 63 gear. If you're wearing level 63 gear and that isn't good enough for a level 65 dungeon, which drops the gear that should replace the 63 gear, then the game doesn't make sense. Someone has to do Bottom's Metal in 63 gear so that someone can get the 65 gear. Bottom's Metal is tough, but the specific problem you're thinking about is a skill issue. And it makes sense because the big pulls that are what really makes Bottom's Metal scary are some of the few pulls that Warrior, once they get Raw Intuition and or Bloodwetting, can't do a full Giga pull and just kill it all. They need to do it in two or three pulls. Meanwhile, the Mount Gold Giga pull, the Warrior can just do that. You need to kite a bunch, but the reason why you can't do the Bottom's Metal Giga pulls as easily is because all those little fluff balls, the bushes, they're ranged. Nox, we were talking about the A Realm Reborn speedrun, and I said I think it took 9 hours, and 8 or 9 hours, and it took 6.5 to do the book step. I recall that you've triple checked it recently. So maybe you remembered it more exactly? Roughly that? Yeah. But yeah, of course, if you're not as skilled as a tank, then, like for instance, Bottom's Metal, the reason why you might feel like you need more gear to do Bottom's Metal is because, well, I know this might sound insane, but technically, doing full wall-to-wall pulls in all dungeons, and just assuming that anyone can do that, is assuming that everyone is capable of doing every dungeon at its maximum difficulty setting, essentially. Not everyone can do that. And not everyone can do that with a handicap. The handicap being actually the opposite. Because the handicap is that they are not overgeared, as opposed to being undergeared. Like, Bottom's Metal in level 63 gear or less, level 60 to 63 gear, is equivalent to being geared exactly right for the dungeon. And being any more than that is actually being overgeared. Hey, Jace, isn't Bottom's Metal also the first eye level increase after 270 tome gear? The only thing that is sooner than that is level 64 crafted gear. Which, if it's your first time through, like if you're going through the MSQ, you might have some of that. Thank you for checking, Nox. But yeah, essentially, if you're gearing, like if you're leveling up a tank and you don't have the better gear and you're like landing in something like Bottom's Metal, and you're like, oh no, I can't deal with this. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that you wipe. And that's okay. And then you learn. Hopefully you improve. And then maybe you'll get it on the second try. Use your mitigation and all that. But if you find that you just can't do it, then just do the thing other tanks do in one pull. Just do it in two. It's okay. Like if I'm in Mental Roulette and I land in a duty like Bottom's Metal and the tank is single pulling, I might be like, oh, they're single pulling, you know, roll my eyes. But I'm not gonna be like, hey, pull more. I might if it's like, if I'm the healer and I'm basically falling asleep, like, oh man, imagine if there was something to heal because this tank is just not taking any damage. I might be like, you could pull more. But I'm not gonna force it. If I wanted to control the pace of the dungeon in that specific sense, I mean, I could have been the tank. Not that that's supposed to mean that the tank gets, like, the ultimate say in how a dungeon is ran. I believe it's a little bit of, like, a team decision. How we run the dungeon, how quickly we go. But I will also say on that note that if the tank is fine to pull big and it goes well, then the healer's probably fine to pull big as well. And I would be surprised if a DPS was like, hey, whoa, slow down. I can't cleave that hard, guys. Come on. My damage can only go so crazy. Like, slow down here. So if the tank goes for it and it works out, then everyone is probably happy. And if the tank asks and the healer says go for it, then everyone's probably happy. So, while there is a little bit of, like, team decision to be made, if the tank isn't confident about the big mega pull... Good luck, Zaf! If the tank doesn't feel confident of the big mega pull, and the healer isn't, like, spurring them on, then it's probably in everyone's best interests to just let the tank pull small. And then just... they'll learn it later. But that's also why in my advice, I think I do say this in my tanking tips videos, that you can pull smaller, but you're supposed to work your way up to this much. Because if you don't try and push your limits, then your limits are never going to move. And then you'll be in a level 100 dungeon never having done a big pull in your life. Because you got too comfortable not doing it. But yeah, as I say quite often, the worst thing that can happen is that you wipe. And that's okay. Probably. Usually. Ragnarokia says, despite being used to tanking, I usually do Bottom's Metal and 2 pulls each before first boss for safety, since died there too many times, no point risking it. Yeah, you can do that. I, of course, pull big because I'm pretty confident when I'm the tank. Ronsom says, have a farm static where we struggle to P4S with current gear, and updating the gear didn't change their damage output. It only changed mine, who was actively trying to play at best performance. Urgh. I'm assuming it was an unsync farm. Yeah, that's a classic Ragnarok here. I have multiple I think I discuss it in multiple mental roulette videos as it comes up. But I think I've also talked about it in like videos like on other things that chain pulling or pulling, like taking wall-to-wall pull a little too literally and things like that can cause a lot of confusion. And a major component to that is because because the prevailing normal strategy that most tanks go with, like the more popular, more common strategy is pull to the last pack and stop there. It has the result that when you pull in a different way, it confuses people. That's also the main reason why when you single pull, it can have an even, like, it has this, like, compounding effect of, well, you're pulling less, so the dungeon is slower, but because everyone in your group is used to a different pace, they're now like, do I use all of my cooldowns now? And things like that. The game doesn't really teach you to pull big, which I think is a big problem. It, in fact, teaches you to single pull. The game doesn't really teach you much in that regard. It just teaches you that there is ways to pull. I would actually counter with that, Alice, that most video games will explain to you the rough outline of how the game is played and then let you figure the rest out yourself. And I feel like very frequently people that play 14 expect something out of 14 that they don't expect out of any other game. Like, for some reason, they expect that the perfectionism of doing content in Final Fantasy XIV means that the game should teach everyone how it's done, so that we don't have disagreements. The game isn't supposed to teach you that. It teaches you how the basics, fundamentals of the game works, and then you figure out the rest. It's a game. Imagine if you bought a board game or something, and then, like, the manual is this thick because the first 10 pages is how you play the game and the rest is a masterclass how to dunk on everyone you can play the game with. Like, you're supposed to figure that out yourself. Skill issue. I'll say Lollipop. I saw you earlier. Hope you're doing well. Yannick, meanwhile, Partyfinder's favorite, Brain Dead, where you purposefully suffer the punishment to ease the mechanic. Yeah, just stand in the thing, it'll be fine. I can't remember if you're even supposed to talk with someone after finishing the book step. Can someone help me there? Did you forget to bring it? No, I'm wielding it. And it says, that's true, it's just to point out that people expecting you to know how to wall-to-wall right away isn't fair. You're right. You're right. The problem there, and I have sort of brought this up before as well, is that the game is so old that each person who's, like, expecting everyone to just know innately in advance may partly expect that because, I mean, they have already seen hundreds of people, like, learn this. Can't remember. Is this where we need the Alexandrite? Yes, this is where we need the Alexandrite. Okay, good. So for them, at some point, they're like, well, everyone knows this at this point. Like, pretty funny detail. Wolfkin asked earlier what I thought about the current poll, and then I didn't even answer. An interesting thing that has happened with a lot of the job difficulty comparison polls, all of those pairwise ones, is that in the community Discord server, we have, you know, some regulars that are very skilled, you know, like actively proccing you mad, like week 1 savage raid clearers and such, and they have a tendency to sit there completely dumbfounded. How it is possible that people find these things difficult? Like, how is it possible that this job is considered harder than that job? It's obviously opposite. But the reason for that is that the things that are difficult for them are basically things that a more casual player doesn't even see. While the thing that the casual player finds difficult is something that the Savage Raider's like, yes, that's called an opener. And things like that. Which causes this complete disconnect. And in the same vein, you will have these kind of players that are completely shocked that how is it possible in the year 2026 that you can run into a Sprout tank that doesn't know to make a pull? And it's like, it's their first time doing Sastasha? Welcome to the game! And they have to learn it at some point. And depending on how self-aware they are or how much they're paying attention, they might not realize that, oh, I'm basically not taking damage. I could probably pull 2 packs. And then they pull 2 packs. I'm still not taking any damage. I could probably pull 3 packs or 4 packs. Exactly, Echo Dance. It's essentially because so many of the player base are essentially returning players or veteran players, means that it's almost a complete shock when someone isn't a veteran player. Let's do these just to clear this up. We can do that as a ninja for some extra speed. Alice says it's interesting that we tend to judge people harsher depending on how far into the game they are, even if it's unknown to us if it's their first time playing that job. Well, see, that one I will say, Alice, if you bought a level skip and a story skip, then I'm sorry. Then if you don't understand how your job works at level 90 and you didn't take time to figure that out, then if the reason why is you don't know how to do that, then you should have taken time to figure out how to do that. And if you do know how to do that, then it's your fault that you didn't do that. And if both of those things are not to your liking, then you should probably not have bought a story and level skip. Like, in that specific regard, you can say I'm a little bit rusty or I'm actually new to it. Like, for instance, if you're a scholar at level 100 doing your first dungeon, if you're scared about that, you could just queue for Sastasha. Like, you could just choose to make it easier for yourself. That was really cursed. Did you see that? The lag made it so that I did the thing correctly. The game did the animation and showed me pressing Huma Shuriken, did the animation of Huma Shuriken, then it switched and did the animation for Raiton because it realized that the order of business means that actually it was Raiton I was casting. I was more talking about jobs that unlock at high levels like Gunbreaker and Sage. Also fair, but unfortunately the same thing goes that... Like, that one is a little harder because that's not your fault that the job starts at a high level. But if you're completely lost on how tanking works, you did make it to level 60. So you could probably figure out that maybe you should do a lower level dungeon to give yourself a smoother start. Like, there's almost no way to spin this in a way, Alice, where I will agree that it is totally okay that your first dungeon as a Gunbreaker, you don't even know what a defensive cooldown is. Because if you get that far, you probably have enough know-how about the game to know that maybe you shouldn't queue for a level 60 dungeon right out the gate if you're not confident in your ability to tank a level 60 dungeon. But I will say, I do agree that the game could probably be a little bit better about giving you a little bit of guidance on that. But I do think that it is a game for, you know... I mean, I guess it's a game for 13 and up, but, you know, you can think. That is a really funny solution. Wow, that's hilarious. Go, Fumeraiton! Bam! That's awesome. That's true, Alice. That's true. I'm just saying that to some degree it's justified. But there is something to be said that some players are more aggressive with their judgment. Like, I can, like, say this as, like, as harshly as I might, but you will have, if you've seen the mentor roulettes, like the mentor roulette streams, I will land in something like Origenics, a level 99 dungeon, with a scholar spamming Physic, and I might once ask them if they've considered using Adloquium, and then just leave it and do the dungeon anyway. So, like, I can say all this, but that's me, like, almost like a parent being like, you should do better. You are better than this. I know you are. Now, the rando you meet in the dungeon are more excused because they're the rando. They might not know me. Naomi says 14 is Peggy 16. Oh, well, in that case, even more brain is required. Hey Nixie, hope you're doing well. I'm also a very new Sprout, like only a month in and only mid-Stormblood. I mean, that's pretty far. Some people take way longer. And whenever I see co-Sprouts messing things up, I always ask for permission first before trying to backseat or comment. That is very good, and that is actually also advice I've given in a video of my own, specifically on giving advice. So very, very good. But exactly. That's also what I'm saying, is that, like, I'll bring this huge game of, oh, you have to do all this stuff, but if I land in a duty with you, like, I mean, if we can make it work while you're basically walking backwards through the dungeon, I guess we'll deal with that. I will, however, be very annoyed on stream. I was gonna say in private, but I mean... The interesting thing there, Nixie, is that I've done, at this point, so many dungeons in Mentor Roulette that those kind of things, like, barely move the needle for me. I will see something like that and be like, well, thankfully they are using their dot. It could be worse. Really, really crazy animation because of the latency. I cast Fumeraiton, kaboom! A really good one that I had somewhat recently, Alice, is a Reaper in Vanguard. No, wait, it was not Vanguard. It was the level 93 dungeon. Your thunder roars. Who was basically just doing 1, 2, 3 combos. Vokosovo, yes. Thank you. Nixie says, the other week I had a Scholar and Roulette that was 90% of the time casting Physic instead of Atlo. In post-AR Dungeon 2, so... Well, see, Nixie, as I said I think just a bit before you checked in, I'm guessing, I had that same type of Scholar in a level 99 dungeon. And I've seen enough of that kind of player that at level 99, my conclusion is they either will not respond to comment, so there's no point, or they'll just be offended that I had the audacity to give them advice. They've played Scholar for insert number here hours, and no one has complained before, and I'm like, yeah, because they saw you and thought lost cause. But sure, do whatever you want, man. Which is what I generally like. That's what I do. If I see someone that is making so catastrophic a mistake in a high level dungeon, I will just think, what can I do? Nothing. Like, they can't possibly have gotten this far never being told. And if they were never told, then there's no universe in which they're gonna listen to me now. Because it's gonna be too difficult to convince them to accept that after this many hours, they've been playing the game wrong all this time. So they make some time. Felt rude, but it was wasting all our time. That's the thing. Is that part of it can also be like a measurement of, am I saving us time by bothering to explain to this person? Nox says, I got the mana recovery relic on Xavian. Nazier Sugar, hope you're doing well. What relic are you going for and how's your day been? I've had a good day. We just finished the book step on Warrior, and a time-saving trick for relics is that you do the quest step that comes a little bit later at the same time. But the thing is, the quest step finishes, or rather, the book step doesn't cover every objective in the quest step. So you kind of have to finish up some extra dungeons when you're finished with the book step. Oh, that's also a good example, Mistel. Some players are so petty that out of spite for you giving them advice, they will play wrong. So sometimes I might also ask myself whether, like the over-under on whether I'm willing to take the risk. But you can like avoid a lot of these problems by just opening with the "Can I give you some advice?" Because like if they actually don't want your advice and they're gonna be petty about it, they'll probably say no. And then not only have you saved yourself, you don't have to deal with the possibility of them being a jerk about it. You don't have to deal with wasting your time explaining to them on the off chance that they don't listen at all. You both save time. Ultimately, it might be like, well, now I have to deal with this guy playing wrong for the rest of the dungeon. Yes, but you would have had to do that anyway. You just saved energy. You don't have to deal with explaining them just for it to fall on deaf ears. But we can only do so much, Nixty. Hey, Madokishi, hope you're doing well. There's also met players that play wrong when the new player doesn't listen to advice. Oh yeah, that's also a fun one. I will say, this one is really contentious, really complicated, because some players might play extremely badly, right? Like a terrible player, but they're like progressing or whatever. You try to give them advice and they go, I mean, I haven't had trouble so far, so why would I need your advice? And it's like a warrior who's not using any defensive cooldowns ever whatsoever, never even once, never using ever raw intuition. So you as the healer had to work extra hard. How do you convince them to maybe use a mitigation? If their argument to not do anything is, well, I haven't had trouble so far, and the reason why they're not having trouble is because every healer that has healed them has basically been working their butt off to keep them alive through that. What do you do? One option could be to just randomly be bad for a minute. Just choose to only use 50% of your power, right? And that's something you could do, but what often happens is that people that try to do this exaggerate too much, and then it becomes an even bigger problem, right? And also becomes a little too obvious. Like, while we're on the topic, also becomes too obvious. Like, they're playing badly so aggressively that the only thing missing is them going, I'm playing badly now because you're bad. Like, that's the only thing missing. And at that point, you're not teaching anyone. You're just being a jerk. Gio Silva says, I had a tank once who only used mids on bosses, but still pulled wall to wall in Kitana Ravel. Oh boy. Yeah, exactly. Some players don't ever realize that actually the hardest parts of a dungeon is usually the big AoE pulls. Most dungeon bosses can't kill a tank outright with their tank buster. I say, breaker. The selflessness is to grit your teeth, deal with it, because it will be faster. Yeah, exactly. If you want to just be done with it, the best thing you can do is just not say anything and force your way through. But if you want to teach them something, then something you can do is indeed deliberately play a little worse and, you know, not cover them. But the question is whether that will help. Because the thing is, if the person you're trying to help has determined that it can't, because you're probably not the only person who has complained to them. You are probably, like, if they, depending on how aggressively they respond, you are almost certainly not the first person to complain. That's why they might have a pretty aggressive response, because they're tired of all the complaints. And if you're not the first person to complain, then you're not gonna be the last. And yeah, exactly as Redmaster says, you can lead a horse to the water but can't make them drink. Exactly. And that is also the amount of horses I've tried to make drink is part of the reason why a lot of the time my solution to seeing someone playing really badly in mental roulette is I go, will me explaining to them right now save us time? Do I need to explain to them? If I don't, then I'll just hope that they'll figure it out on their own at some point. And then we just... Then there's a lesson for chat. Exactly, Alice. That's kind of what I'm getting at, is that if they don't enthusiastically say yes, please, when you offer to give them advice, then there's a pretty high likelihood that the reason why things haven't changed is because they refuse to change. Nixty says, I've been dabbling in every combat job I can get since I started, and White Mage is definitely not easy 1 to 50 in my opinion. That's correct. I've actually talked a little bit about this. I think I brought it up in also in my White Mage video a bit ago. White Mage is what I've described as a late bloomer. It's basically weaker, in my opinion, than all of the other healers until like level 60. There are like angles to it where it's like, well, I mean, it has holy where the others don't have anything like that can match that. I should have possibly played this burst a little less randomly, but this is really hard on this latency. Oh boy. As if you look at healing only, I mean, White Mage doing more damage doesn't really matter, does it? If you wanted more damage, you'd probably just play a DPS. You will go, Sir Sugar. Enjoy your evening. So you're... Oh. Super freestyle. Let's see. Pie and cloth. Boom. The other two. Oh. But yeah. biggest point, I've talked about this many times before actually, but the biggest reason why I tend to not bother to try and give advice when I land in a duty with someone at a reasonably high level is that now I'm a mathematician. I'm not like super knowledgeable on exactly how the brain works and all that, but the brain does not like to be called stupid. And it will try to defend its own values a lot of the time over learning. So a lot of the time, reaching level 80 or something, playing whatever you're playing completely wrong, and then being told so, will often require someone humble enough to be offered advice and be capable of going, you know, I am probably wrong. And then just owning it. And while there are plenty of people like that, essentially the higher level you go, the more likely you will meet someone where the brain just, like, digs its figurative heels in and go, no, I know how to do this. I've spent 100 hours doing this and it has worked all this time. So you can't convince me otherwise. Aurelian. And that's usually where it goes wrong. Is you're not gonna convince them. Because they've spent too long doing it the way that they want. So, for you to be right, they have to be wrong. By such a huge margin that they might not be able to accept that. Which is also, like, how you get those, like... I think it's, like, almost like some sort of, like, teenager contrarianism or whatever you want to call it, of being what's the word? I'm losing the word. Like they're choosing to refuse to do the thing you're suggesting just to be cross. Except they're 30. Sarah says, if a person was interested in learning, it's also less likely they'd be clueless for so long. Also a good point. If they were receptive to advice, they would probably not have gotten this far, not knowing. So when you see someone in a relatively high-level dungeon, not knowing something relatively fundamental, the probability that they don't know because of, like, just complete, insanely unlikely scenario that they never ran into anyone that ever suggested it, and they never once thought to check. Like, it's more likely that they just don't want your advice. It's more likely they don't want your advice. You can't tell me what to do, I'm an adult. Exactly. That kind of situation. Mistral says the brain is bad at recalling memories. It might remember things, but it is very good at just making it up to fill the gaps where applicable. Correct. In fact, it's supposedly very easy to make up memories. Especially if it sounds convincing enough. After all, you all remember that I used Hyoshiranryu on the first boss in this dungeon, right? That's how I one-shotted it. So that I didn't have to deal with all of its parts breaking down, so you have to do multiple phases. That's what happened, right, guys? Now that I've let it simmer for like 10 seconds, what actually happened is that I walked up to it and punched it like 3 times, realizing it was a lot tankier than I thought. But you could probably picture that I used that attack if you know what Hyoshoranryu is. Jay says, you can only do a single book at a time, right? You can't take different ones at once for different weapons. Correct. If you try to grab a different book while you already have one, she will, like, the NPC will ask you if you want to give back the one you already got. And you don't get a refund, by the way. So, don't. Ragnarok says, from memory, I'm positive I remember fighting Dawntrail in FF8 as a train in a forest which had skeletons hanging out the window and it was a boss fight. I remember it, but it didn't exist. Exactly. That is like, it could have been that you had, like, that you did play, where's my Furite Sand? There it is. That you played FF8 a lot. And then something else merged together with it, and you had a dream, and you remember that. Or something like that. And that's how it could have played out in your mind. But your brain doesn't remember that. Oh, that was actually something we made up? You are likely at this step with a lot of weapons, Jace. Because this is like the stopgap for most A Realm Reborn Relic weapons. I have every remaining weapon I have at this step. Or specifically at the book step. Precisely because of how long it takes. Eh? I've been buying it exactly right too. I have not been buying it. I've just been doing the daily quest from Brangwine that gives you a map every day. I only need to do it 10 more times. Then I've gotten every single Alexandrite I need for all of the remaining weapons. Also, by the way, bug that hasn't been fixed. I can't pick up a Treasured Mother because the game doesn't realize that I don't already have it. I think because it thinks I have it because I have Morbid Motivation. Isn't that weird? I remember seeing this months ago and going, that's weird. Not fixed yet, apparently. Really, really specific bug. I believe it fixes itself on the daily reset or perhaps when we re-enter the zone. But weird. Have a good evening, Mistel. Ragnarok says, for Cure 1, I find in stressful situations where tanks might die, Cure 1 can land before Cure 2 lands, so spamming it instead seems to be better at saving a tank almost dead if I have nothing else. Let me put it like this, Ragnarok here. If Cure 2 can't make it, remember it's half a second slower than Cure 1. If Cure 2 can't make it, then the fact Cure 1 is nearly 50% as powerful as Cure 2 means that the tank will die. If it needs that much attention, they will die before your next Cure 1. And if they didn't, then the Cure 2 would have made it. Almost certainly. So I have a feeling that the real reason why you end up reaching for Cure 1 is because that's your go-to. Which means that you can reach it faster because you're used to doing that. I highly advise that you just get used to reaching for Cure 2, because you might feel like it's a more common situation, but the amount of situations where that half second matters are so few that if you meet them regularly, that has to be an issue with you being a little late, I think. Jay says, is there an ideal way to get the required material other than Spirit Bond farming yourself buying from the market board? No, that's it. That's it. We buy it from the market board. And I'm saying that, Ragnarok, here, as someone who does recognize that that half second can matter in very, very strict situations. And I have Cure 1 on literally 1. It is more effort, quote unquote, for me to use Cure 2. So I'm not like saying, as someone who never uses Cure 2, never uses Cure 1, that you're making a mistake. I'm saying it as a fellow person that does recognize that Cure 1 has its place, that this one is not it. I can't help but feel like it works. See, the thing is, Ragnarok here, how many of these scenarios will you feel like it worked? Did you go, no, I'm gonna Cure 2 instead, just to see if it mattered? Because I'm going to guess that the answer is never. It reminds me a bit of, so a while back, I made a video basically explaining why tenacity is not considered very useful as a stat. The long story short is that tanks typically don't take enough damage to justify taking tenacity over more damage, and determination is slightly more damage than tenacity. There have been more recent cases where bosses have been hitting so hard that tenacity might feel helpful, but you're still going to have enough healing to go around that whether you have or have not enough tenacity, that's not the difference maker. That doesn't matter. That being said, I had a commenter that basically said on that video that they have done, I mean, all we have is their word, right? But they claimed that they had done every ultimate in the game on release and had used tenacity always, and that they believe that if you're not using tenacity, you're basically trolling because you're demanding so much more healing and attention from the healers that they're losing damage and you're not providing the damage to compensate. However, we have plenty of video evidence suggesting that whether a tank does or does not have tenacity doesn't actually impact the healer's capacity to attack in between heals. They are generally not losing uptime due to healing the tank. Maybe in a Realm Reborn content, but in ultimates, it's probably healing the party that is taking up their energy. The problem and the through line here, is that I'm willing to, I would probably bet real money, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, that this person has never once, never in their life, tried doing these ultimates without the tenacity, just for comparison's sake. So they're basically saying X works, but I never tried the opposite. Ragnarok says, I use tenacity after crit determination, not sure if correct. For materia, the optimal move is crit, then direct hit for maximum damage. Like, you cannot find direct hit on gear, but you meld crit if there's space for full materia of it. If there isn't, you meld direct hit. Mathematically optimal. I explain it in my videos on stats, typically. The difference between that and determination is pretty small, but the difference between that and tenacity is pretty big, because tenacity is like 20% weaker at increasing your damage output than determination and direct hit. And yes, Zero Silver says, sometimes tenacity to hit a specific breakpoint. Now it's getting a lot more theoretical and stuff, and it might become more complicated, but basically, if there are specific cases where one tenacity materia is actually good, sometimes maybe two, but that's not because of the damage reduction. And hey, Provide and Qwerty, hope you're doing well. There, like, the point where I would use tenacity, and I have actually mentioned this in a video, in my video, the optimal, like the optimal gear for Mentor Roulette. For the tank build, or for the tank optimization, I do recommend getting tenacity maxed out, or at least having a backup set with maximum tenacity. Why? Because tenacity increases your ability to take damage, and it makes you better at healing, and makes you do more damage. Severely less than crit and directed and determination does the damage part of it, but if your party's having trouble staying alive, as in if you have terrible healers, for instance, then you putting on a heavy tenacity set is like just equipping Rampart. Just grabbing Rampart as an additional defensive cooldown and just going, I'm wearing this now, while you also have access to Rampart on top. And that can make a difference if your healer is weak or if something else is causing trouble. But that would probably only be in a situation like an extreme duty or something. Like, for instance, if you're doing Ramu Extreme. Qwerty says, going absolute maximum tenacity, literally every single slot is a total of 11% mitigation. It's 20%, they buffed it. I just did the math right now. I'll do the math right now. Let's do this, right? Observe the damage reduction up there. It's a little small on your screen, probably. It doesn't matter which tank it is. This one already has maxed out tenacity. .6% so far. I've only filled out like 4 pieces. 8.5. Oops. $9.3. 10.7. 12.2. 13.9. Do you see what did you see? I used Bis gear, not tenacity gear. Qwerty, did you not understand what I said? You're right, you can't wear 2 augmented. We'll do this. I think you missed the part where I said you use a best in slot set maximizing tenacity. Come on. See, you could go, like, if you're going to go, well, I'm trying to maximize at maximum level, right? You have to do this, yeah? So let's do that, just to put, like, for the detail of that. Sure. 17%. And let's see this one, 18%. Now, it's not quite a rampart, but I think it gets the point across. QWERTY with the 11%. Just to be clear on that, QWERTY, I did the math. I'm not just talking out of my ear. I know this stuff. What? Now, as I was saying, this isn't optimal for maximum damage. In fact, it is explicitly not optimal for damage. But if you're doing an extreme duty and you're dying because you're taking too much damage because your healers are bad, then this will do more damage than you being dead on the floor with a lot more crit. Granted, if you were synced down for something like Ramuh Extreme, then all of the materia here would not work. But you know what you could do if your materia is turned off? Then this stat would be maxed out anyway when you get synced down. All you need is to replace every piece that doesn't have tenacity with one that is reasonably high item level with tenacity on it, and that would work. Which is why I was like gonna pick this instead, because it has tenacity on it, this one doesn't. You could pick this instead of that. Things like that. Yeah, 20% damage reduction, just... Also, Ikapru! Is it set for current extremes? Getting synced down, don't you lose access to materials? So just to explain it, in the video, I specify a level range wherein this set can work. Because you just put gear on with tenacity on it. Crit and tenacity. And this would give you maximized stats for basically like level... Like, the specific set was made at the early days of Dawntrail, so I think it was like... It would work for like level 85 dungeons, something like that. Just universally. Got more complicated above that. But it has gotten, you have gotten better options now, right? But the way that it works when you sync down is when you sync down, now I'm on White Mage here, right? When you sync down, your materia stops working, but you see these stats here. Let me actually use this as an example. You see these available materia enhancements numbers? The number over here on the right, the limit of how much stat you're allowed to bring, is based on the item level of the item. And the thing that syncs down is the item level of the item, effectively speaking. So when you drop to level 50, it'll crunch this number, the 257, down to a number that is reasonable for level 50. And then just only let that much through. It also turns off the materia on the item, but if the item has a ludicrous amount of spell speed on it anyway, it means that you can just zone in with an item that has 2 stats maxed out, whereas a real item at that item level would not have that. It would have like 1.5, something like that. But yeah, okay, fair enough, QWERTY. If you were specifically thinking putting tenacity materia and best in slot gear, that would, of course, not lead to you having 20% damage reduction. But the best in slot gear is like putting tenacity in the best in slot gear and crying foul when I say you can get 20% damage reduction from maximizing tenacity. The best in slot is best in slot for maximizing crit and determination. It is specific. Like if there's the option between crit determination and crit tenacity, the best in slot set will not pick the one with tenacity. The only reason you'll find a piece with crit tenacity on it in the best in slot list is because the alternative doesn't have anything better. Fair enough, Curti. I might have missed something. But in that case, I'm sorry. Specifically set at 211 tenacity, it's 11%. You could increase it with tenacity gear, but using best in slot gear, it's 11%. Fair enough. I'm sorry. Probably jumped the gun there. My bad. But you're probably right, yes. Sorry about that. Most players don't carry 2 sets of gear, you know what I mean? Yes, that is true. That is actually also the major reason why my video talking about this said, this is the gear you would have. And like not pointing to like my armory chest showing it there, but just pointing at a theoretical list and going, these are the items you need that I don't have. Because yes, most people don't really bother to maintain a whole bunch of sets. Said the guy with 2 black mage gear sets. Capru says, what video was it in? I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was something like optimizing for success in mentor roulette or something like that. I'm sure Aerodol would have found it really quickly. Let me see if I can find it. Because if I'm having trouble finding it, you probably will too. And I at least can make sure that I'm only looking through my whole catalog of videos. However, the notion that it might have Mentor in the name means that there's a lot more videos to look through. Oh, there it is. Optimizing for success in Mentor Roulette. Really funny. I can actually see what the file name for the video was. It was my working title, like as in the title I used when working on it, was Mentor Carrier, because the whole point was to use a gear set to optimize yourself so much that you can carry the party to increase your probability of success. Which I think I'm decently qualified to talk on, considering that I have not failed a mentor roulette for like a year and a half, I think. Curtis, so they watch most of your content except mentor roulette ones because mentor roulette is not trauma I want to relive. Well, you should check it out. We generally only have successes. Yeah, to catch up on Ragnarokia's question, quite specifically, I mean, only if you think that they're fun, QWERTY, but you might give it a chance. There are some that have been like, I haven't watched these before, and then they watch one and they're like, this is great. So, you know, maybe you'll like it. But to your question, Ragnarok here, the way that it works is when you get synced down, the way that an item getting synced down works is that first, because the item is too high level, materia just ceases to exist on the item. The game interacts as if the item doesn't have materia. Then the item level basically gets reduced until it hits a point where it should be for the particular duty. For instance, in a level 50 duty that doesn't have a restricting, like, specified item level restriction, any gear will get reduced to item level 130, which is incidentally the exact same item level as Ironworks Magitech gear that is augmented over here. Presumably, your stats will be capped at 31 for crit and directed and things like that. So both of your stats will be 31. Hey Cat, hope you're doing well. But you won't have any materia. They'll just go gone. What's interesting about that is that can mean that an item, like an appropriate item level gear piece with, you know, good stats and materia can sometimes be superior to a higher item level item synced down, if the materia can lead to more, like, a greater sum of stats than an item that has both secondary stats maxed out. This is more likely to happen with helmets, gloves, boots, accessories, if you can find one that isn't if you can find one that has 2 materia slots. Dr. Insano says, but as expansions continue, it seems like we still do more and more damage for those sync duties. Have I just been imagining it? No. Dr. Insano, I believe in actual Heavensward, like legit Heavensward, the strongest single hit in the game was a Death Flare at like 400 potency. So I've been told. Which is 500 now. That's what I've been told, Jace. I'm not 100% sure on it, and it's a little bit awkward to check. But yeah, power creep. And Rocky says, when we sink down in current expansion, like when joining level 100 dungeons, we also lose materia there too? Yes. If you queue into a dungeon like Clitium that does not have an item level restriction, you get to keep all your gear, right? Mistwake, you get to keep your gear as is. Mesoterminal, if your gear is higher item level than 760, it will get crunched down to 760. And if the item got crunched down to 760, materia turn off. Just like that. It's a little weird. Who am I kidding? It's very weird. You know, just before I forget, I just wanted to test something real quick. And Rocky says, is that why expert roulette is so much quicker than the 100 roulette? Or is it mostly the high item level carrying it? I think a major component to it might actually be, if you're just queuing with randos, then it's more likely that that better geared players are going to be doing expert roulette, while they will not do level 100. If you're going with friends, then like the difference you're feeling is more likely to actually be, yes, this syncing is crunching you down a little bit. Also, hey Captain Slushy, hope you're doing well, and thank you so much for the 19 months. That's crazy. Tome and Savage gear this expansion? I haven't used any of it visually, so I have no idea. Actually, the only thing that I've used visually is there's this hat. This hat is item level 700. It was a farmable tombstone gear before it like very early. I believe it's from Couponuts now. But yeah, I will say in regards to the whole syncing thing and the weirdness, it sort of solves itself because the content where the syncing gets really jank, like for instance the level 100 thing, it's not like you need that extra stat. Like, okay, the dungeon is 1 minute longer. Woe is me. We're practically dying over here. I mean, the time you would invest in optimizing your gear for, I don't know, Uewata Field Station, you would need to do Uewata Field Station many times to make up that lost, to make up the time again that you invested in getting that optimal gear if you didn't have it in advance. So Zamp says, I'm thinking about choosing Shadowbringer Samurai Relic to farm as my first ever relic in the game. Any recommendations? Just be aware that Shadowbringer's relics can be really, really awkward to farm. Because of it taking place, like a lot of it taking place in Boja, and you might have trouble with the Lupin Regine sections and things like that. But at the same time, Shadowbringer's relics are really useful for Stormblood ultimates. It might be worth it. You can find them in Palace of the Dead. You can, but just to get you going, you do need to do the 3 things associated with Boja just to unlock the quests. So, and because of Boja being as it is, it can be a little awkward to just get that going. In your Ragnarok, your suggestion of having multiple steps going at the same time is very good. I did that myself, and I have all of the Shadowbringer's Relic finished. How bad is it now? I don't know, but based on what I've heard, it is it's a very real possibility that you may need to farm or to do things like Castrum Legislatori as like 2 or 3 players at times. I'm not 100% sure how real that is, but that is what I've heard. And while possible due to the weirdness of the zone and the like player compensation and such, you need to be like, that's not something that works as your first go. It's like going, oh yeah, you can solo a dungeon as warrior synced. So go and do that as your first go, and then like make it even harder and make it so that if you fail even once, you have to wait possibly an hour before you can try again. It's like omega oof, but I have heard that if you like find the right time, it's not too bad. But it is specifically Legislatori and oh, what's it called? The one in Zadnor, the Dalriada. Those kind of suck because people generally find other ways to do those steps. But the problem is that to unlock the steps for the relic, I believe you have to do those once each. And you do have to beat them. So even though there are alternative paths to do the relics, you do have to do it once. So that sucks. But I'm sure you got this, Sam. Anyway, I mean, I did the farm in Shadowbringer specifically because I realized that, uh-oh, this is gonna be a nightmare when Endwalker lands. Anyway, we finished the book step on Warrior. And then we also caught up on the quests. Although, weirdly, there is a bug with Brangwine over here where you can't pick up the repeat quest if you already have Morbid Motivation. For some reason. But I think we will round it up there. Wait, is I going to you FanFest? Yes, I am. Thank you. But yeah, on that note, I think we'll round it up there. So if you would like to be part of the Discord community server, there's a link right there in the chat. There you'll find the weekly schedule where you can see what else is coming up in the coming days. I usually update Sunday or Monday. You'll also find the announcement room with links to videos and streams when I put them out. And if you grab the reminder roll in the role assignments room, you get a notification whenever I do that. As well as the next one around 15 minutes before stream starts. You can catch it right when we go live. And if you'd like to support the channel more directly, you can like over on the YouTube side of things. You can follow, subscribe, become a member, super chat, cheer, all of that goodness. And if you don't like any of that, there's also the Ko-Fi link right there. There, it all helps support me in the channel directly, so I can focus on doing stuff like this with all of you. So thanks much for the support. And by the way, QWERTY, I am sorry that I went off on you on a little misunderstanding like that. That's on me. I'm very sorry. I think I missed something. And read it very differently than how you meant it as well. Anyway, let's see if we can raid somebody. Yeah, exactly. Hey, Dead Man. Hope you're doing well. We're looking for someone to raid. You can join for that. Ooh, Rudem is seemingly trying some some solo Pilgrim's Traverse. I'm sure that's something Yannick will find fun. He hasn't started yet, I think. We can catch it right from the start. Woohoo! Anyway, that'll be it from me tonight. So good night, good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending where you are in the world, and hope to see you all very soon. Bye-bye!